how do we interact with the retail, in this instance, or I've got manufacturing clients, financial services clients. How are we going to put all of the GDPR and the DPA 2018 into practical use, and what are the challenges? So here we are, this is our demographic. We think there's one error, because I'm not sure we've got an under 10, but actually, I think looking around, if you look around at yourselves as an audience and you look at this breakdown, I think it's pretty good. And yet, we did not have, purposefully, a privacy notice. We'll come back, because we've also got another little camera looking at you all at the moment, and we'll come back to that later on as well. Please.
You said it was at head height, and I can see you've missed me off the list. And I'm just wondering, where it was.
It was on it's just stuck on a pillar just outside well, you say we've missed it out. That's the point. It could be that it misidentified you, put you into a different category. This is part of the technology. This is not yet a perfect technology, but as it learns, it gets more and more effective. And I think that's the point. We're sort of back in that situation in which we sort of believe technology. Well, sometimes it's right, but this is just the beginnings of what's going to be happening. If this was happening every time you walked into a store and it was probably positioned more correctly, it started to learn more about the demographics of that store, it would get more and more granular. Shall we... Let's go on. We're going to do this from two perspectives, from the point of view of the customer, but then we're going to come back. I want to try and find enough time to talk about from the point of view of staff, because there are privacy issues for both sets of people in this connected store.
Right, so just a little bit of intro around the connected store. So at our Deloitte digital offices, we have a connected store. So it's a pop-up, it has women's clothing and it has a grocery area, but it also has a suite of technologies that enable a connected experience. And when we take our clients around it, we follow our customer Zoe, who you'll meet in a moment, and our store assistant Mark as they interact with each other and the space. So now I'd like to introduce you to Zoe.
Meet Zoe. She's a digitally savvy shopper who likes to be in the know, and she is always looking for inspiration. On her lunch break, Zoe browses the Clark & Green shopping app. She likes a pair of boots, so buys them using Apple Pay. She's chosen Click and Collect from her local store. On confirmation, she is welcomed to sign up to the Notoriety Rewards Card, a new loyalty scheme being promoted by Clark & Green. Zoe loves the brand and signs up for the additional benefits. The card is added to her digital wallet, and her Clark & Green profile is updated automatically. While binging on the Netflix series with her boyfriend, Zoe falls in love with the dress worn by the lead actress. She opens her Style Finder app, uploads a screenshot of the dress, and gets shown related style ideas. She finds a similar dress which will be perfect for the birthday party next weekend. She taps Shop Now and arrives on the Clark & Green website to take a closer look. Zoe adds the dress to her wish list, so it is ready to remind her when she is next near the store. 2 days later, Zoe is walking by Clark & Green when she gets a notification. As she approaches the storefront, she sees a video display modelling products from the same collection as her dress.
Right, so as you saw, we left Zoe outside the store with a notification. So because she has the app, we assume that she's allowed notifications, she's allowed location services, and we know she's near the store, so we can send her that notification to say, hey, why don't you come in and try on your the item that's on your wish list. Once she goes in, we can enable her to locate the item through indoor navigation. We can also give her personalised recommendations on things that might go with it, or special offers on other items. And she can also check out herself using the app, and she can leave feedback about her experience. So she's obviously a very connected consumer, and you may think that that's actually quite a lot happening in one trip to the shops.
Slight pause now. If we go on to the next slide, these were my initial reactions, and I want you all to now tell me what more I should have added, because what are the privacy implications for what we've just seen? We've got consent, so from a legal point of view, she's decided to download the app. Let's assume the app's very well constructed and it's all fine. But actually, there's quite a lot going on about that individual. That store is going to learn more and more about them. The location tracking, both inside and outside the store. The notification, so when you're going past. Now, that actually may well be seen as very helpful, but it's also what's that borderline of intrusion? What's that borderline of it being a bit freaky? The voucher activating, you know, what kind of behaviors are we creating? Do we want to have that relationship? How is that relationship going to be mediated? Does Steve, as the DPO, actually have to get involved in having conversations with marketing about what level of intrusion is acceptable in terms of sending notifications, or should that be exclusive to the customer? Should it be the relationship manager? What are the kind of things that are going to have to be going on and being defined? Personalization and loyalty. Personalization, I know this from sort of all the work I used to do at BBC, the iPlayer, unless you actually have a lot of data, you can't get that personalization right. You know, you're going to need to know people. But if you get to know people that well, at what point, again, does it tip over into a state which is actually uncomfortable rather than encouraging trust? And we as privacy professionals, I would contend, are going to be involved or should be involved in these conversations, but not purely from a, well, Article 30 says that you've got to inform, you know, Article 14 inform. It's not just going to be about privacy notices. We'll come back to how hell do you write privacy notice for some of the things that's going to be possible very soon. But it's also about more visceral things. It's about the survival of the business. It's about growing business. It's about engineering trust and relationships. And I think that is where all of this comes in. And actually, it's not necessarily our comfort zone. It's not necessarily where we're used to talking about different articles, different ways of looking at things, and yes, you're now regulatory in the clear, tick. But that's where we are already. Nearly everything that Mel has described so far is sort of in play. Maybe not fully out there yet, but it's in play. So let's now have a look at some that's just coming a bit further down the conveyor belt towards us.
So, I mean, as we know, digital is having a massive impact on sales. So people are influenced by digital on a daily basis. And this could just be visiting an e-commerce site or interacting with a brand on social media. But those people who are influenced by digital are actually 42% more likely to make a purchase when they come into store. However, if you think of the physical environment, 85% of UK retail still takes place in a store. So you still need to have a good bricks and mortar proposition. But physical retail still needs to change. People expect a connected experience. If you're online, you expect to pick up where you left off when you're in store. You don't want to repeat yourself. You want to be able to use your own device, perhaps to pay or to do things. You don't necessarily want to queue at a till or always have to ask for somebody. So this is why we sort of created our connected store that I mentioned in our offices. So it's about actually doing it experience first, looking at what experiences should we create for our customers, how can technology enable this, but also it's about testing things, seeing how this is actually going to work in real life, making people think. And of course, it's not one size fits all. So you saw that we created our brand Clark & Green, and that was a conscious decision because it allowed us to decide what the right experience would be for our customers, for our employees, but most importantly for our brand. So retailers are now facing a number of challenges. So we talk about being omni-channel, how can we actually create this connected experience? Being personalized, and obviously increasing the ROI from the workforce. So if we think about omni-channel, you need to be able to measure data physically and online to find trends across a massive data set. So you're looking at whether it's try to buy ratio in a fitting room, the demographic mix in store and comparing that to the people online. So if you think about the online world, there's a huge amount of information knowing where a person's come from when they're looking at a web page, a heat map of where people are actually clicking or hovering, how much revenue a specific piece of content has generated. So how can we replicate that in a physical environment and then merge the two together? personalization. So in order to be personalized across channels, as James mentioned, we need to know a lot about the individuals that are coming in, and we need to do it right. So it's about obviously not crossing that creepy line, but still knowing people enough to give relevant content at the right time and in the right context. And then finally, if we think about ROI, this will somehow require us to measure our workforce more efficiently. So we need to look at changing the way that we manage performance compared to traditional retail stores.
Before we go on, I think what's interesting is we're talking trusted and transparent. We're back into this idea that actually, I think if we get it right, privacy can be a huge enabler in this field. We can actually help companies, brands get better relationships, because that's what we've spent, however long, I've been in privacy now for about 15 years. And it's actually a large focus of that time is around trust. We might not have used the word, but actually data protection fundamentally should be about trust, that people could learn to trust the organization you're the data protection officer for to look after their data properly. And if you do get that trust, they tend to give you more data because they think they're going to get more out of it. It's also up here, it's about that balance, it's the value exchange that Mel's already spoken about. We're talking about making things easy, frictionless. I do now expect, if I'm reading a book on my e-reader, and then I had some moments yesterday waiting for you all to come back on the punts, and I just went onto my phone, picked up where I was reading on the book on my e-reader, read for a few pages. When I now go back to my e-reader, I know that it'll be at the right page. These kinds of things, making life frictionless, is part of this providing the personalization, providing the omnichannel, but it has privacy implications. And we've got to get better, I think, as an industry as well, of explaining some of this, even though it's going to be sometimes quite difficult to do. I mean, do you remember when we had all those newspaper stories about Samsung, the voice-activated television set is listening to you. How did you think it worked? And it's sending it all back to Korea. Okay, maybe that could have been explained a bit better along the way, So I think there are some of these things where we've got to work with industries who have got real problems and real issues that have got to be overcome in practical ways, and making our privacy input a positive input to that.
And the point is that I think we're moving away from this idea that you may have, your Nectar card or something where you don't really get much benefit, but they just want to know everything that you buy so that they can, measure their own sales. I think it's more than that. It's about making things more convenient for customers, more frictionless, basically, but also about getting the data for themselves so that they understand how they can do that better. And I think that there's a real opportunity here to make this sort of thing, make personalization secure, make it reassure customers that actually, they're giving their data, but there's a real value that you get. So I think rather than it just being about, I'm going to opt in here, or I'm going to have a long list of terms and conditions that I need to read to make sure that I'm not going to get spammed, on my email, it's actually about how can we work towards creating a really, really good experience.